John Sparks, welcome back. Second day running.
Wow, thanks. Tough to get good staff.
It was great. I really enjoyed it yesterday. And it's late tonight. We've kept everyone waiting. I've been struggling back across town through torrential rain, having been locked in a briefing with a senior Israeli official, which was fascinating.
There's nobody in the building. It's just us. But the podcast can continue.
It can indeed. Lots to get through. So let's get into it.
I'm John Sparks.
And I'm Mark Stone, and it's Thursday, the 10th of July, day 171 of Trump's presidency, and you're listening to Trump 100.
On today's episode, Mark, as you said, you've just hustled back from an all-important briefing on the situation in the Middle East. Plus, 5 African leaders come to the White House to press the flesh with Donald Trump. Question is, how are they going to try and win him over?
Yes, and we'll tell you why Jeffrey Epstein and all that surrounds him is still the subject of many questions for Donald Trump. John, I actually think the most interesting thing that happened today was not what we expected. We thought it was going to be some development on the Middle East and on Gaza on the ceasefire. It wasn't. It was an extraordinary spectacle. Donald Trump with a number of African leaders. We'll come to that in a moment. But first, as I said, I've just come from a building opposite the White House where I was with a small group of journalists being given a briefing by a senior Israeli official. Let's just get over one thing, because I always think that viewers and listeners, readers might find it weird that we do this thing where we talk about a senior Israeli or a senior government official. We don't name them. That's because sometimes, and you've done this loads of times as well, you'll get given a briefing by someone who's very senior in whichever government they're from. But in order to speak more frankly, there is an agreement that they won't be named. So it's what's known as a background briefing. So initially, when we turned up here at this event, we were told it was going to be off the record. That means that we can't report any of it. We can just use it to inform our reporting, right? Then when we got there, the principal said, actually, we'll do this on background. So you can quote me, but it is as a senior Israeli official. So that, unfortunately, is all I can say about who this person was, because that was the agreement. And this all comes as Prime Minister Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, is in Washington, is still here, is kind of hanging around a bit, because they haven't got this announcement that they wanted to make. Donald Trump last week said he hoped he'd have a ceasefire in Gaza by the end of last week. Didn't happen. Maybe this week hasn't yet happened. It's Thursday coming up to. And
he leaves on... He's supposed to leave tomorrow, isn't he?
Exactly. Now, this senior official said to us that the chances of a 60-day ceasefire, which is what they're initially negotiating, this official said it might be possible within a week, 2 weeks, not a day. So that looks like Netanyahu is going to go home without a deal this week.
So it could take a week, it could take 2 weeks, but it's not going to take a day.
Right.
Got it.
Which I think is quite interesting, given that we were in a place at the beginning of this week where the expectation it was going to be wrapped up by the end of this week. I also thought that there may be a situation where, and this may still happen, where Trump and Netanyahu kind of announce something preemptively because things are going in the right direction, and then their staff get sent away to tie up many, many loose ends.
Look, did you get a chance to put any questions to this senior official?
Yeah, it was very, very open. Everyone got the chance to ask a question. And there was a lot of discussion about Iran, because obviously Israel is feeling very proud at the moment that they've managed to, over the past few weeks, to obliterate, in Donald Trump's words, Iran's nuclear capability. But the Israeli Prime Minister, Netanyahu, has said repeatedly and publicly that they have dismantled over many, many months all of Iran's proxies. And so the official was keen to talk about that these proxies, whether it be Hezbollah in Lebanon, whether it be the Houthis in Yemen, or indeed Hamas in Gaza, dismantled. And now the head of the snake also dismantled. And we were told tonight that the Israelis believe that the relationship that they have with Donald Trump is intimate. That was the word that was used. An intimate relationship, because they are so closely aligned. It was sort of compared to Roosevelt and Churchill, a very, very close alignment. And any suggestion that Trump and Netanyahu don't get on, or that Trump is irritated with Netanyahu, well, from this Israeli official, absolutely not. We are hand in glove.
Okay, that's interesting. It certainly has been said and reported in the United States that the two men aren't that close, don't particularly trust each other, not an intimate relationship. And you do wonder whether the Israelis, the senior official, are engaging in wishful thinking.
Yeah, I was about to say.
It certainly suits them, doesn't it? Yeah.
You want to sound like Trump's my best buddy.
Yeah.
Trump might be. I mean, it was only a couple of weeks ago what did Trump say? He was getting on the helicopter. They don't know what they're doing. And he was talking about Israel and Iran. He was clearly irritated then. Yeah. Now, apparently, according to the Israelis, it's an intimate relationship. A couple of other points that I think is important to make, and then we'll move on to the African meeting, which was incredible. This official said to us, we asked about, what's the plan for Gaza after this ceasefire? Wouldn't be drawn on that, but would say no two-state solution. No one wants it in Israel, according to this official. The majority of people don't want it now. No two-state solution, not going to happen, and never going to happen until the point at which the Palestinians are prepared to recognize a Jewish state. When that happens, so said this official, then we can talk about a Palestinian state. So hard line on that. And in the short term, 60-day ceasefire, possible, as I say, 1 week, maybe 2. But on the chances of a ceasefire lasting beyond 60 days, and this is interesting, the official said, we will begin negotiations on a permanent settlement. Will we achieve it? It's questionable, but Hamas will not be there. So I thought that was quite interesting. And if you are sitting in Doha as a Hamas official, you might wonder, what's the point in going for a ceasefire if the officials on the other side in Israel are already saying, look, we're not necessarily going to stick to it after 60 days.
I think that is really interesting, and that seems to be a major impediment, doesn't it, for ceasefire talks that would turn into any kind of lasting settlement. Interesting that this evening Hamas released a statement saying there wasn't just sort of 1 or 2 issues to solve, to iron out. There's a whole bunch of issues around aid, around a permanent end to the ceasefire, about where the Israelis would withdraw to during a ceasefire agreement. Yeah. I think earlier in the week, the Americans certainly were advancing this vision that really a ceasefire was just a matter of days, just a matter of a few details away. It was going to happen. And I think, reading this Hamas statement, it feels further away than that.
Yeah, although on that, it is just one issue that is the real sticking point. That is the status of the Israeli military in Gaza beyond when the ceasefire comes into effect. And interestingly, the Israeli official said tonight, we would want the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, in every square meter of Gaza and then hand it over to someone else. The official said, I do not want to govern Gaza. I do not want to govern. But the first thing you have to do is defeat Hamas.
I mean, there's a problem there because ultimately you are negotiating with Hamas. How do Hamas negotiate their destruction, their elimination? That is an impossible thing to do.
Right. And therein lies the big problem. Anyway, John, African leaders, a few of them came to the White House. You sat through a cabinet meeting yesterday, and today you sat through another moment. Tell us.
I sat through this meeting. I thought it was fascinating, actually, deeply interesting. You had 5 African leaders. I'll see if I can remember the countries.
Gabon, well, of course, our former Africa correspondent. Yeah, so the perfect guy to have here.
So no stress, no pressure. Gabon, Senegal, Guinea-Bissau. Guinea-Bissau is tiny, very, very tiny country in West Africa. Liberia and Mauritania. Mauritania has 5 million people. It's very small. These 5 leaders sitting in front of the U.S. president, each one a major beneficiary of aid from the United States in the form of monies handed out by the State Department and USAID. So what did they do when they got themselves positioned in front of the U.S. president? Praised him. They congratulated him. They hailed him as a great peacemaker. The president of Senegal also praised him as a great golfer.
On m'a dit que vous êtes un excellent champion de golf qui demande concentration, précision et bref, les qualités qu'il faut pour être un grand leader. Le Sénégal a des opportunités exceptionnelles à offrir pour tout ce qui est hôtellerie et tourisme. Et pourquoi pas penser à aussi investir dans l'hôtellerie avec un parcours de golf qui serait situé à 6 heures de New York, 4 heures de Miami, 5 heures de l'Europe et 8 heures des pays du Golfe qui pourraient se retrouver là-bas pour que vous puissiez être challengés et montrer davantage votre talent de bon golfeur. Merci beaucoup.
Yeah, I think it was the president of Senegal who pointed out, incidentally, each of them was asked. The US president first said welcome to everyone. Then he said, why don't you all go ahead and introduce yourselves? And it was it felt awkward straight away for me. And then one by one, I can't remember which of the presidents went first.
It was Mauritania.
Mauritania, right.
Yeah.
He's like, we've got great real estate. We've got a really good tourism industry, and you could build one of your golf clubs here. And it's only he said it's only a 5 or 6 hour flight from Miami. To which Trump responded. I thought this was quite funny. He said, Trump said, looks like a long way to go to show off my skills, but that's very nice.
Yeah.
And then moved on. Weird moment.
A strange moment. Donald Trump didn't know which country they were from as he looked at them. He didn't know their names, and he displayed a pretty basic lack of knowledge as well. I mean, some people would describe it as ignorance. And an example being the Liberian president, who's called Joseph Boakai. Donald Trump said to him, "You speak very good English. You speak very good English. Where did you learn your English? Where did you learn it?" And the official language and the working language of Liberia is English. In fact, Liberia was founded by the American Colonization Society as a place for U.S. slaves to resettle themselves.
Mr. President, we thank you for this opportunity to be here. Liberia is a longtime friend of the United States, and we believe in your policy of making America great again. And we also go a long way with you in your diplomacy that has to do with economic development and commercial friendship. And we just want to thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, thank you. And such good English, such beautiful. Where did you learn to speak so beautifully? Where were you educated? Where?
Yes, sir.
In Liberia.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's very interesting. It's beautiful English.
Sure.
I have people at this table can't speak nearly as well.
Very
And
good,
they,
sir.
So, did that affect what Joseph Boakai had to say? No, it didn't. Joseph Boakai said, "Hey, look, I'm right behind Make America Great Again. I believe and accept your policies." But in Liberia, he is going to lose almost half, 48% of his health budget. Yeah. His half of his health budget was paid by the Americans. Yeah. So I thought that was a telling example of these individuals sat in front of Trump essentially singing for their supper. What they had decided to do was to flatter him, perhaps because they felt that was the only strategy available to them. This was a demonstration of strength and weakness, of power and weakness, and they took the only pathway that they thought was open to them. On the other hand, Donald Trump is like a bit of a boss man, one of these sort of boss leaders that they are familiar with in Africa. They'll know this instinctively, that you don't go in and challenge him in his house. So I think there'll be some understanding as well.
There was a lot of talk about natural resources. I mean, these countries are rich in natural resources, and they wanted to remind the president of that. Not only remind them, where they are on a map, but say, look, there's investment opportunities here. So one of them was saying, we'd like these resources to be tapped by you. Yeah. I was also struck that one of them appeared to be leveraging countries, because he reminded the president, or told the president, because he probably didn't know, that they were already in negotiations with the European Union about minerals. Yeah. But those weren't going very well. So maybe we could do a deal with you. It was kind of clever leveraging. Yeah. And then talking, really flattery. You have the best military equipment in the world. We'd like some of that. One of them said, "You are pragmatic. So am I. I like to move quickly. So do you." I mean, it was kind of cringy stuff. But we saw our own Prime Minister Keir Starmer doing it. With the letter from the king.
He did the same thing. He did do the same thing. I mean, one country that wasn't mentioned by these African leaders is China. China is the dominant economic power and trader and economic force on the continent now. The Americans aren't nowhere close, actually. And if you look at Gabon, a quarter of the magnesium that is mined in Gabon, essential for batteries, goes to China. So it's going to be difficult for the Americans to move in from a position where they are not a serious player in Africa. They are no longer a serious player.
That might have been one avenue they could have gone down, and actually up front said to President Trump, look, if you guys don't come to help us out and to invest in our countries, the Chinese are already doing it. That might have got Trump listening, but then might also have really upset Beijing.
Tough one. They were in a very tough, very difficult position.
But you don't say no when you're asked to come, do you? Now, we mentioned at the top of the podcast the story of Jeffrey Epstein, a story that doesn't seem to go away for the administration. One particular cabinet member under some pressure, that is the Attorney General Pam Bondi. And this is kind of a story of the administration's own doing, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. This is about Jeffrey Epstein. People like Trump, like Bondi, had suggested that they were going to expose the truth, expose the real story about Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein was a financier. He had many wealthy friends who was convicted of sex offenses, and he committed suicide in prison in 2019. And the story that sort of circulated in right-wing political circles was that there was a cover-up about Epstein's client list.
To stop. Someone's got a Hoover. Sorry, we're in so late, John, that the cleaners are here. Excuse me. Sorry, we're recording. Sorry about that. The cleaners are in, but I've just asked them if they can pause for 1 second. The Trump team, before they got in, said, we're going to tell you everything. We're going to tell you everything. And of course they didn't. They didn't. You know, it continues to be wildly speculative, mostly confined to occupy the thoughts of those who spend all their time down rabbit holes online. But the expectation was that the Trump administration, when in office, would unseal all of this so everyone could see.
That's right. And in February, Pam Bondi really created a rod for her own back, telling Fox News in an interview that the Epstein files were sitting on her desk right now to review. They were right there. She was looking at them. She really kind of fed this anticipation. However, last weekend, the Department of Justice released an unsigned memo that basically said, nothing to see here. There's no client list, no evidence that Epstein was blackmailing his clients and so on and so forth. The problem is, now we've had all this speculation going into this, that the MAGA base don't actually believe it. They don't believe the Department of Justice. They don't believe Pam Bondi now. And you've got people like this sort of famous Trump ally Laura Loomer, who says the American people don't tolerate being lied to. They want the truth. Yeah,
it's really interesting. It's another MAGA on MAGA situation. We had it a couple of weeks ago on a wholly different issue, Iran. And the MAGA base really uneasy with Trump's decision to drop bombs on Iran, and now they're upset about this sort of mega MAGA conspiracy theory, or maybe it isn't. You know, that's the point. They want to know the truth. Why is it such a big deal? Well, because they're all talking about it. Remember, it was only a few weeks ago. Feels like a different age, but Elon Musk's parting shot for Donald Trump when they spectacularly fell out was, guess what? I'll tell everyone what's really in the Epstein files about you. I mean, goodness me. Like, anyway, he then backed down on that.
Well, he deleted the tweet, didn't he?
Deleted the tweet. And it's not only Elon Musk. Conspiracy theorist Alex Jones, he's not happy. Tucker Carlson as well. MAGA on MAGA, as I say. And Steve Bannon as well, who is a proper MAGA influencer. You know, once the one-time chief strategist for Donald Trump, very close to Trump. He's in and out of the White House. Had lunch with him there a few days ago. He too is uneasy about it, telling Rob Crilly from The Telegraph, friend of the podcast, he's been on a few times, telling Rob that a special prosecutor needs to investigate the files. So lots of MAGA people not very happy. Trump yesterday at the cabinet meeting was like to a journalist, why are you asking about Epstein? Well, because it's still a story, Mr. President.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this, where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration.
You could see Donald Trump really getting irritated about it. I mean, he's moved on, hasn't he? He wants people to concentrate on something else. I suppose question, will anybody pay the price for this? I think this section of MAGA who have got the bit between their teeth, they are after Pam Bondi, aren't they? And also the head of the FBI, Kash Patel. They don't think he's done a good enough job to look into Jeffrey Epstein and the files.
Yeah, all in all, that's put a lot of pressure on Pam Bondi, one of Donald Trump's key cabinet members. The president has not been nearly as trigger happy, has he, at firing his staff members as he did in his first term. It was a genuine revolving door in his first presidency. It's not been like that.
It looks like Pam Bondi and the rest of Trump's team are safe for now. Anyway, if you want to get in touch, you can do so at Trump100 at sky.uk. Send us your questions, comments, and thoughts.
Yeah, please do. Thanks for listening. And John, thanks for staying late. We need to get back through the rain to the Bureau.
Anytime. I think there's somebody out there with a Hoover. So we better get moving.
We must get going. But do follow, subscribe to the podcast wherever you get them. And please leave us a comment or review or tell a friend. And we will see you tomorrow for another day of Trump 100. Bye-bye.
Bye.